It's common to try to divide skill acquisition up into three stages, which are really quite qualitative in their character. The three stages are called the cognitive stage, the associative stage, and the autonomous stage. The cognitive phase is essentially what one might consider the declarative phase of skill acquisition, where one has essentially some declarative representation of what one should do, which might be essentially a representation of a set of instructions or some examples that illustrate how the problem should be solved. And that what one does is consciously, very laboriously, go through the process of trying to map that declarative representation into performance. During this stage, you'll find that people will often spontaneously rehearse things to themselves while they are doing the task. So I remember, for instance, when I first learned how to operate a standard gear car, and had to rehearse for myself the steps that were involved in the shifting gears, and I would consciously rehearse, in fact, say to myself as I went to shift, now disengage the clutch, now shift the gear and re-engage the clutch, apply the foot to the accelerator, and I basically went through those steps, said them to myself, and followed them. In fact, the cognitive stage often appears very much like a step following or recipe following stage, where you rehearse the steps that you're supposed to go through. With repeated practice, we make this transition to the associative stage, which I characterize as essentially being the stage in which new production rules have been created, which perform those tasks without this conscious verbal repetition of the procedure that you're supposed to do. They just do the task. And so you get much smoother performance. You see essentially dropout of simultaneous verbal report, and in many cases, in fact, you find that people forget the declarative knowledge on which they're performing the skill. So you will frequently find students, for instance, in mathematics classes who can perform fluently algebraic transformations and have no longer any idea why they're justified. They just know that's what you do in this situation. With even more practice, the skill is characterized as going forward into the autonomous stage, but roughly what is the case is that the skill becomes much less resource demanding. Frequently you find that people are capable of engaging in dual tasks while they do this. So when someone becomes very expert at driving, they have relatively little difficulty carrying on a conversation in parallel with the driving. The whole process of performing the skill of driving has now been sufficiently automated and sufficiently non-resource draining that they can do other tasks in parallel.